So I'm joined now by Dan Henninger, deputy editor of the Wall Street Journal's editorial page and a Fox News contributor. He wrote a really interesting piece on President Biden and his handling of COVID in the paper today. Also, Juan Williams, Fox News political analyst, and Jonathan Turley, constitutional attorney and Fox News contributor. Great to have all of you with us. Jonathan, I think we'll start with you because we're coming off of this Supreme Court news, and I heard you moments ago, but now we can see your face. So give me a sense of what your reaction is to this as this news sinks in and you've had a few more minutes to take a look at this decision.
Well, it's as we predicted. After the argument, I said I thought that the court was going to split. The more significant mandate is the OSHA mandate, which affects far greater number of people. They almost lost both cases. They came within one vote of getting swept cleanly. But you have two justices on the right that agreed that the nexus was close enough when it comes to these healthcare facilities. Also, it was notable, and this is what Chief Justice Roberts kept on referencing, that none of the medical facilities were contesting the rule. They said this isn't like what we usually have, where the regulated parties are in front of us saying, please don't do this. So it wasn't a surprise that the second mandate was allowed to go forward. But the first loss is a significant one. The Biden administration has really assembled quite an impressive list of losses in federal court. And this is one of the biggest ones yet.
That's true. And I should mention that we're waiting for a news conference. Jen Psaki is about to come before the press in the White House. She's got a lot on her plate. And now this new information about this loss for the Biden team with regard to mandating private companies, because Dan Henninger, we've all seen the president lean into the camera or lean into the microphone and whisper about getting vaccinated and making that message such a big part and really, being, sort of hard on people who have made a different decision in all of this. Then on top of that, you've got the information that Omicron seems to be able to evade the existing vaccines that are out there. And so it's becoming a tougher argument to, get people to take another one when Omicron it doesn't seem to work against Omicron. So you wrote a great piece on all this today. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thought, Martha, is that we seem to have reached a stage where the president is mainly trying to use the intensity of his emotions and his voice to accomplish significant public policy. And typically that doesn't work. You need the votes. And it really does seem clear that the president, as it seemed to be clear coming out of that meeting with the Democrats today, is losing confidence in the ability of the Democrats to execute his policies. And I think a command decision has been made inside the White House that they are simply going to stick with the principles and ideas that the Democrats, the progressive Democrats, are pushing, such as the voting rights bill, such as vaccine mandates, win or lose. He doesn't seem to be able to come up with an alternative course of political strategy or action. And so he's simply going to stick with it for better or worse. The polling suggests that it is going worse as his approval rating keeps falling and the Democrats are put at great risk of losing control of the House in November. But I don't see that they can come up with an alternative strategy right now.
Yeah, Juan, what about that? If you're a political advisor to the president right now and he's spending time on Capitol Hill today, pushing the voting rights reform that he would like to see, it doesn't look like it has the ability to pass because Manchin and today's Sinema made clear that they are not going to allow a change in this filibuster rule. That's where they seem to stand right now. And you also have this number, which Dan pointed out in his piece today in the Wall Street Journal. 33% of Americans want the government to focus on COVID. That number is down by 20 points year over year. So does he need to shift his focus to the things that Americans care about?
Well, I think they're both things Americans care about deeply: the economy, voting rights, COVID. I don't think there's any question Americans are locked in. I think in part, much of the sort of grim attitude the American people have at this moment is fatigue with COVID. I think the economy and inflation has people worried. So I think he is paying attention. But Martha, when it comes to process, I think the American people are less bought in to paying attention to it than they are wanting to see politicians who stand by principle who have some heart, who are willing to stand up and make a fight. Biden's numbers that you mentioned, his poll numbers, they go down not because Republicans or anyone else is buying off. It's because the Democratic base has weakened and said, where is the fighting President Biden, the one that we elected, the one that was willing to take on President Trump, the willing to stand up for, what should be an American principle, not a partisan issue, the right to vote. Where is the guy who's willing to stand up and say on COVID, you know what, Americans, all of us, no matter about party, would be better off if more people are vaccinated.
But he has said those things really clearly. I mean, he's been, he went to Georgia. Now he's on the Hill. But the problem is that he can't get any consensus on that issue because there's a lot of disagreement about what these voting changes would actually mean and whether they would make voting more fair or not. You've got 80% of Americans who are in favor of voter ID, just for example. So, I mean, the question is, when he looks at all of these poll numbers, and I know they like to say they don't look at them, but the place where people are more concerned is inflation, the border. Those are issues that he has chosen not to focus on.
No, I think that he is focused. The fact that he is working on voting rights and making a fight and showing some heart doesn't mean that he's not paying attention to COVID. Or doesn't mean that he's not paying attention to any issue. Immigration is the one that you flagged. But I just want to get back to something you said. When you see that so many Americans are concerned about COVID, they are willing to say, you know what, we want, everybody should be respected, but we want America to get over this COVID pandemic. We want to move beyond it. And if that would help, I think that's what you're seeing Biden make a clear stand. If you want to vote on it, come the midterms, let's have a vote on it.
Dan Henninger, all these questions about testing and all of people's ability to get their hands on these tests, all of this. And the president today saying, 30% of people don't wear masks and saying that they're going to send masks to everybody in the mail. Does this feel like an argument that should have been out there months ago or longer ago than that?
Well, I think what the American people really wanted months ago was a little more, shall I say, modesty on the part of their political leadership, instead of asserting, as President Biden did, that they were going to defeat the virus. And what I wrote in my column today is I think the American people are simply losing faith in the authority of their political leaders and indeed of their scientific leaders. There is such a degree of confusion surrounding the pandemic and Omicron now that people are tuning out and they're just saying, I will go forward with my life with or without masks, which worked at one point until we were told they didn't work, with or without tests, which we can't get access to. And the American people are throwing up their hands. And it is not a particularly good thing when there's that loss of authority, that loss of confidence in public and political leadership. But that's the course we are on right now. And the White House seems determined to keep pushing ahead with more and more piecemeal policies, and they shall do so in the wake of this loss before the Supreme Court, that I think are simply not impressing the American people anymore, who are going off on their own to deal with Omicron.
I think it's a great point. I think people have decided that after 2 years, they have their own learning curve, and they have learned to adjust things in their lives, and they're caring less and less about what the CDC says because they hear all these different messages. And that may be true now for private companies as well, because now they've been kind of liberated from this vaccine mandate by the Supreme Court in this decision that just came down. So we'll see what the companies decide to do and whether or not this changes their own mood about their reaction to all of this. Gentlemen, thank you. Jonathan Turley, great to have you here. And in the prior hour, reacting to this big news. Juan Williams, always good to have you here. Dan Henninger, great to see you, and always on a Thursday when you come out with a great piece week after week. So thank you very much, gentlemen.